Hi there. My name is Sal, and I'll be sharing from the book of Hebrews, chapter 1. We're starting a new book, and so I'll lead off with chapter 1. The purpose of Hebrews was to encourage perseverance in the face of suffering for those who were struggling to maintain their faith and to answer many questions that arose from believing in Christ. Above, there was questions as related to the law of Moses about the temple, animal sacrifices. Was it really enough to trust in Christ? And so that is primarily highlighted through the superiority of Christ and the sufficiency of his work. Now, who's the author? We don't know who the author is. No one knows. Because I think it's found that it's easier to probably try to date this than to find who the authorship is. But some have suggested it's the Apostle Paul. From a date perspective, it's most likely in the early 60 AD, and some people think possibly just a little bit after 70 AD. The idea behind it was, since it was written for new believers, mostly Jewish, in Rome, you have a tendency to believe that what it was assumed is, since they had not been called upon to suffer the death of their faith, for the faith, that they may not have come under Nero's persecution, which was in AD 64. So there's a lot of emphasis to Jewish topics and themes, such as the superiority of Jesus Christ over angels, and which is highlighted throughout this chapter, over Moses, Joshua, and the Old Testament believers. So that's clearly shown here. The Jewish communities in the first century often exalted angels as powerful, glorious creatures who brought divine revelations to inferior human beings. The outlooks of the local Jewish community was rooted in biblical passages, but they gave an excessive honor to the angels. And this exaggerated honor for the angels raised a serious challenge for those who followed Christ, because after all, everyone knew that Jesus was flesh and blood, a human being. That's what they saw. So then how could anyone follow what he said instead of the revelations of angels? Well, the author of Hebrews tries to respond to this challenge in two sets of verses. One is verses 1 through 4, where he writes that his audience should follow Jesus because is God's supreme source of the divine revelation. The author acknowledged that God spoke through angels and other means throughout Old Testament history. But he insisted that as the divinely appointed royal high priest of the last days, Jesus brought revelation that was far superior to any revelation given through angels. In chapter 1, verse 5 through 14, the author of Hebrews also explained that Jesus is greater than the angels because he alone is God's messianic son. And he noted that Jesus fulfilled the ideals for David's house, and Jesus also fulfilled David's prediction of the victory of God's messianic son over all of God's enemies. And by contrast, he noted in the very last verse that angels are nothing more than spirits sent to serve those who inherit salvation in Christ. So, just like they were struggling with their faith, do you know of someone that is struggling with their faith, that it might have turned his or her back on Christ and the church and simply walked away? Or perhaps you have struggled to maintain your own Christian commitment in the face of disillusionment, spiritual confusion, and such. What we find is that the Hebrews is the place where we want to go to look for Jesus, because it points us to the Christ. It provides light to help struggling Christians, to see Jesus clearly and stand firm. So I hope that blesses you today. Have a great day.